Omnis Protocol. This episode is Web Warriors versus Criminal Syndicate. I am running Miles, Gwen, Venom with Enchantress and Valkyrie. My opponent has Kingpin with Green Goblin, Taskmaster, Proxima, and Zemo. My tactics cards are Lethal Protector, Climbing Gear, All Webbed Up, Med Pack, Disarm, and Brace for Impact. I may have repeated one. My opponent is running Cruelty with Shadow Organization, Med Pack, Tactical Analysis, and Brace for Impact. I'm going to start off with Miles. He is going for the cube on that side. The Crisis is Extremis console and cubes. So that is a size 4. This is my Hydra base table. Miles goes over, grabs the cube, and then heads back to the Extremis console that's over there. Right here, my opponent is figuring out if we think that Kingpin is going to be able to get to the center cube. It looks like he definitely can. We were just concerned with the exact placement of that barrier, that maybe it wouldn't be possible, but ended up being no issue. And that size 1 piece right there in front of him is going to make it a little difficult to pull Kingpin in. All right, so now I'm trying to take a look at just how close is Kingpin. One of the things on my mind is potentially Enchantress using her Siren's Call to push Kingpin towards the middle. Well, it's not actually a push, but advance him towards. So I'm just trying to get an idea of where would Enchantress have to be to do that sort of maneuver. Potentially thinking about whether or not she would do that and then walk towards one of the crisis elements. So right here, I'm just trying to figure out where exactly that math is going to line things up. But I'm not going to go for that play just yet. I decide here I really need to go get the other cube. And so I'm having Venom walk over there, grab the cube on that side. I still have concerns. I know he didn't go for Goblin grabbing the cube on my side right away because of how much power I had over there. But after I activate one more character, he still could make that decision. So I just felt more comfortable grabbing the cube right away. So he is going to activate Goblin now because of where I put Venom. Even though I'm going to have cover, he's going to be able to walk up, grab a cube, and throw a bomb at Venom. So not great for me, but it was kind of a sacrifice that I had to make. All right, Pumpkin Bomb coming from the Goblin Man. I only have 2 dice. I ended up getting a crit, and with cover, I end up taking no damage. But he does get the Wild and Incinerates Venom. But I was kind of crazy that he blocked all the damage. That's some boss Venom defensive rolls. So that finishes up Green Goblin. I still have Enchantress, Gwen, and Valkyrie. It's a situation where I kind of wish that I was going second so that I would have the last move, but with that just not being the case, I decide I'm going to go ahead and put Gwen up there to try to steal that point. Now Proxima's moving up. She counts as 2, so she's immediately going to be able to take it from Gwen. She won't be able to score the point. He is just deciding now, does he want Proxima within range 3 to potentially spear throw, or stay just outside of it so Venom can't attack her? He's electing to be in at the moment. I decide here I'm going to go ahead and have Valkyrie move up to the point, and she is going to throw Proxima away. I decide not. There was a part of me that's like, well, I could throw her towards Venom and set up for maybe some Venom nom time. But I decide here we're going to go ahead and just toss her away. Try to keep my characters alive longer if I can. So he still has Taskmaster and still has Zemo. Here, my opponent wants to figure out if Taskmaster is going to be in range to get to that console, and it looks like he will probably be out, which means Taskmaster is going to move up towards the middle one. I think potentially a good play here would have been to have Taskmaster grab the cube and move back towards his console. That way, Zemo moving up onto this console, kind of in the bottom, he wouldn't be taking damage from the cube. But it was not something that we thought about in that moment. But you'll see later in the game why that decision matters. A little foreshadowing. So I think that would have ended up being advantageous because Taskmaster is back there a little safer, since Taskmaster could not be the one moving up to the Extremist console. So I am going to have to do Enchantress. I don't have anything super awesome for her to do. She can't go after Zemo to send him off of it. Interesting enough, I didn't think about it at the moment. She could potentially have double moved and moved Taskmaster off of that back point, which I hadn't even considered at that moment. What I decided to do here was move up once and then have Kingpin advance towards Venom, thinking that maybe Venom tries to eat Kingpin next turn. Now, she also does get to do one beam attack on Kingpin. It is 5 dice, range 3. So she does get the wild, which means I get to steal the power from him so he can't use his inert to pain type of ability. So she still gets 2 power out of using it, so she kind of nets 0 overall. So overall, a solid play. Definitely kind of wondering if I should have gone for just getting Taskmaster off of that point. That would have been interesting. So Zemo books it towards Enchantress after grabbing the token and positions himself just outside of 3. Overall score is he gets 5 and I get 4. So let's move on to round 2. All right, it is round 2, Omnis Protocol, Web Warriors versus Kingpin. Not versus Kingpin, versus Criminal Syndicate, but it is kind of versus Kingpin. So I do have priority here, and I'm thinking Venom is the way to start. And so I decide to have Venom yank in Green Goblin. I decide against going after Kingpin because I think with his ability to negate damage, and he had the power to remove the damage from the cube, I decided it's better to go after Goblin. But my first attack roll, I roll a grand total of 1 damage, and then he blocks more than 1 damage. So no damage. I leave him bleeding. And then he rolls 2 successes, one of them being a crit, rolls into a 3rd success. And so even though my second attack was solid damage, he only ends up taking 1 from that one. So I just did 1 damage, and he's bleeding. Not a phenomenal Venom turn at all. Now I'm thinking that if I just leave Goblin there, it is going to be pretty bad for Venom. So I decide this is a good time for Disarm. Venom spends the 1 power that he has, and I decide to spend 1 off of Gwen and disarm Green Goblin. At least this will protect Venom from just getting double energy attacked from Green Goblin. And so that should at least keep Venom alive for now. What we're thinking about here is now might as well do something with Green Goblin. He's got a cube. He's only got 5 stamina now. So the action is Green Goblin moves backwards and then is going to spend 2 to pass off the cube to Taskmaster. contemplate having him just move again and then heal, but the heal would be negated by bleeding anyway. So the kind of the final decision is that he basically just moves and then shakes bleed. So, all right, so I decide I'm going to activate Enchantress. She spends 3 and just yanks the token off of Kingpin and then moves backwards onto the point. So go Enchantress, shenanigans. May have actually been better to do that first with Enchantress instead of activate Venom, but honestly, I didn't think about it in that moment. So he decides that he wants to do some stuff with Kingpin, but Kingpin's just a little out of position, and so he is going to have Taskmaster use tactical analysis on Kingpin. And Taskmaster kind of wants to chill back there safely. And so he's kind of got to activate at some point. And so this seems like as good a time as any. So Taskmaster kind of chills and got the tactical analyzing on Kingpin. So now Kingpin is really up in my face. Valkyrie can't do anything to Kingpin later on, whereas Gwen and Miles can move him. So I decide this is going to be the moment where I activate Valkyrie. And since Taskmaster and Green Goblin are activated, she's just going to double move to that back Extremis console, and then she will spend her 2 power to toss Taskmaster off. This is why she was not the one that I had not use disarm, because I wanted to make sure she had the 2 power to toss someone away. But I am definitely feeling there's going to be a ton of characters getting moved around in this particular matchup. Tons and tons. So he still has Proxima and Zemo and Kingpin. He decides the move that he wants to do is basically just relocate Zemo a little bit, have Zemo chill, and hang on that point for the time being. Realizing now, because he had 2 power, this really would have been a good time to heal Zemo for 1 and interact with the console, but I don't think he thought about that in that moment. We've talked about it with multiple of the characters so far, because we had considered it for Green Goblin. Yeah, I think that is a really key thing to think about after the fact. Up until even editing the video, I had not considered that he really should have taken that moment and interacted. I think that's a pretty big deal, because now Miles is going after him. And so with the medium move, he is not within range 3, so he couldn't have kicked from there. So it's not something where I could have placed and then immediately kicked. So he just advanced, and then he's going to do a web swing onto the point. I'm going to do my web line kick. I end up rolling 4 wilds and a hit. He has 2 blocks, one being a wild, and then the other is a skull, so he can't re-roll that. We discussed that potentially he would have wanted to have Master Swordsman, which actually, thinking about it, this is why he wanted to have 2 power on the character, because if he healed 1, he would not have the ability to Master Swordsman and attack. But the problem here is his reroll doesn't matter. He's blocking 2. I roll enough that with the wild, I kick him into the wall, and it is enough, because he did not heal, that he drops it to the point, and now Miles has 2 cubes. And Miles does interact to heal 1. And so this comes back to, if either we had changed things up and Taskmaster had picked up the cube and then backed up to the Extremis console, or if Zemo had healed, then Zemo would be alive at the moment. And so that is probably a huge turning point in the game. That's how much one damage can matter, and this is why we often evaluate characters based on one stamina so significantly. So Kingpin is walking onto the point. He smacks Enchantress. She ends up taking 1 damage. Now Kingpin is going to throw her off of the point. He is just deciding, does he want to throw her all the way away? Does he want to throw her into the size 4 piece to potentially take a damage? He is definitely going to do the throw. So first we're kind of taking a look at how far away would she potentially be thrown. This is kind of where she would go all the way back. So we're kind of evaluating it from here. Would it be better to keep her closer so he could potentially do some punching on her later? After the discussion, we decided that would be better. So what we end up resolving is Enchantress gets thrown just kind of at a slight angle, so she eventually impacts the piece of terrain, but is outside of one of the crisis and within range 2 of Kingpin. So Gwen, because she used disarm, only has a single power on her, so she cannot both move, she can't double move and do the web line, so she's going to have to advance once and then impact webbing. He blocks 1. I did roll 3 successes on the 4 dice, so overall, I end up putting 2 damage on him from that attack. So here I'm just trying to make sure what kind of staying at the widest angle that I could, but I want to get him off of that point. So that wraps up my last activation. He still has Proxima. Proxima could have just walked onto that 1 point and then maybe even made an attack on Venom as well. But because it would also deny me a point, we decided it'd be better to walk once and then spear throw onto Valkyrie, because you can potentially soften her up, and it not just gets him a point, but it also denies me one as well. I blocked nothing, but he only rolled 1 success. We've had a lot of really mediocre attack rolls in this game so far. Yes, the score ends up being that I score 5 on that turn and he scores 2. So the score ends up being 9-7. So pretty crazy turnaround because of that Miles play. So let's see what happens in round 3. Moving on. All right, big score shift from the last round. Because of my 5 score and denying him quite a bit, ends up being that I'm now ahead by 2 points. So huge change. That's how much healing 1 point on a character can end up mattering. So I decide, now that I'm ahead, I want to play for a very safe play at the moment. And what I decide to do is I'm going to heal 1. I'm going to interact with that extract, or sorry, not that extract, but that secure. And then I will advance, use web swing, drop Miles onto the secure, and from there I can do a kick onto Kingpin, which I do get the wild. I ended up with 5 successes again. He was going to take 3. He ignores 1 of it. And so I end up getting 2 power out of it. So I interact again to heal the 2nd point off of Miles, because now it is a different secure. And I have 2 left. And so from there, I am going to medpack Enchantress. At this moment, I was starting to wonder if I have the wrong amount of damage on her and she might actually be at 3 damage, because I don't think I put the damage on her from the cube damage. And so, but I'm med packing, so she's going back to full anyway. So the fact that I marked it wrong, but I was realizing at the moment, I was thinking maybe she was at 3 damage. But now I've got Kingpin really far out of position, and I'm feeling relatively safe with Miles. So this feels like a pretty strong position from here. It is crazy how much one attack can change things, and such a subtle decision like saving your power versus interacting to heal one can end up mattering. So because Venom is incinerated, his action with Green Goblin, he ends up getting another damage on Venom. Because I had cover, at least my 1 dice gave me a success. From here, we're debating, should Green Goblin hit and run to somewhere? We discuss whether or not he should keep Trick or Treat available or if he should hit and run, but we decide it's really important to get each of his characters onto a point. And we can back him up to this one that Valkyrie can't throw him on. So overall, he had 3 successes. I just get 1 success from cover, so he gets 2 more damage on me. So now Venom has taken 5 damage. Not great. We talk about which one should he go towards. Instinctively, the first thought was move him towards the one that has no one on it. But that puts him closer to Gwen. And we're thinking over here, he's actually injured a little bit. He can move over there, interact to heal one. And he's over there where Valkyrie can't actually throw him off. And so that seems like a good spot for Goblin to go. I feel like I do need to do something with Venom now so I don't potentially lose his activation, but I don't have anything great to do. And I could double move him to try to keep him relatively safe, but that also doesn't feel wonderful. I can get to the point within 1 move, so he is going to shake, incinerate, and then interact for 1, so he has 4 damage on him instead of 5. Not an amazing play by any means, but I really just wanted him to activate and not lose it completely. Because either 1 stamina on him could make a difference. So from here, decides that Zemo is going to advance. He could charge and then use the sword rush, but he decides to advance and then charge. I think we failed to remove all of the power in this moment, but he did spend all 4 to charge and Master Swordsman. But he only ends up doing 2 damage, and I end up blocking 2. So pretty overall mediocre roll. Valkyrie just kind of being a tank. I'm now contemplating here, if Valkyrie was able to miraculously daze Proxima, I could activate last. But I'm thinking the odds of me actually getting that is pretty unlikely. I decide she can't get to that far console, and so I'm going to see if I can put some pressure on Green Goblin. I Warrior of Legend. Overall, I only have 3 successes after Warrior of Legend, and he blocks 2, so takes 1. So that means she only got 1 power, so I can't Warrior of Legend on the second attack. I end up getting 4 successes on this one, and I get 3 damage through on him. At this point, he has 2 health. And now, because I got enough power off of it, I decide I am going to throw someone. The piece of terrain that's next to her is only a size 2. And so decide I might as well throw a character. So I throw Zemo at him. He decides that because he only has 2 health left, this is worth using Brace to make sure that Goblin doesn't get dazed here. Because if Goblin were to get dazed, Valkyrie would be owning that point with Zemo off of it. Well, Zemo is injured anyway, but needs to keep Goblin alive there. So now decides to send Proxima after Venom. She is going to spear throw at him, so it's 5 dice energy. He only has 2 defense dice. She rolled 3 successes. With my reroll, I block 1. Take 2, go down to 1. Now, the order of resolution is he gets to resolve cruelty before I get to resolve so many snacks. We are Venom. And so now he's got a 5 dice mystic attack, and as long as he gets 1 damage through, he will daze Venom. Cruelty triggers about the same time as a flurry. Overall, he got 4 successes. I would have had to roll a crit and get a success on all dice, and it did not happen, obviously. So she is able to daze Venom and has the power to still pick up the cube. So good use of cruelty. I really like that card for them. That puts Proxima in a solid place. So here I'm thinking I only have 1 power on Gwen. I'm thinking I need to get Proxima off of that point, but I'm going for the spider technique because I need to move into a different position to get her off of it. I do get 1 damage through. And so with the 1 damage, I get the 2nd power. And because it's spider technique, now I can advance. And this is key because I need to be able to advance with her to put her into a position where I can actually use webline to get Proxima off, which is why I didn't go for the impact webbing there. Because with impact webbing, pulling her towards, she would either bump into Venom or bump into the building. So that's why I had to go for the risk. But this does allow me to pull her off. We actually stop here. We discuss, do I want to have her pulled as far as we can go, or do I want to pull her at an angle where she would eventually bump into the building and keep her closer to Venom? But I'm to kind of debate things back and forth, and I think this is a mistake, but I eventually decide that I want her to be a little bit closer, and I want to be able to potentially throw her in addition to attacking her, because I think I might try to daze her my first activation. Thinking back, I think that was a mistake. I think potentially leave her as far away as possible, but at the moment, both options seemed reasonable. I was also kind of concerned that he might activate her first and KO Venom is also a reasonable possibility. Part of it is because of the angle of the building, if she was at range 3, then she would have cover. And so I was a little concerned about her getting cover on top of Invul and Martial Artist. Martial Artist can messes that up too. I don't know. Maybe I should have left her at range 3. So here we're discussing whether or not he should have potentially used Shadow Organization in this round. But because Shadow Organization would have really only stopped that 1 kick on Kingpin, which was impactful, but we were also talking about Shadow Organization can stop 1 attack every single round of every game, and so maybe not the best possible moment. He does have med pack though, so he's thinking Kingpin's got to move up and get some healing done. So he does have the power to med pack and interact with the secure. So we're thinking possibly double move him, take over the point, and the debate here was, do you go for the Kingpin play first, or do you go for the Taskmaster play first, moving on to the other point? The problem was he had concerns that with all the power on Enchantress, if he moved over onto that secure, Enchantress would just move over there and take the cube from him, like walk him off the point and take the cube. And so it seemed like Kingpin was the better one to do first, which may not be immediately apparent when you look at it. Like, why would you activate Kingpin first? Enchantress just going to move her off. The problem is there's a higher risk with Taskmaster and giving her another cube. So here I'm deciding, do I want to stand there and double beam? I was trying to see, do I have an angle where I don't hit Miles? And I wasn't really sure, but I decide I'm going to move him off anyway. And I think I want to move her as well. So I decide I'm going to go ahead and spend the 2 to walk him off. Now I'm just trying to figure out kind of exactly where do I want to drop Kingpin. There's definitely some options, and so I'm just figuring out, because it's going to relate to where her final positioning is. So I decide to fly her over a bit, and I decide I kind of want her a little bit more centralized in case I want to steal the token from Proxima. I'm dealing 4 damage. He doesn't have any power, so the sap does nothing. And he cannot negate any damage. So he gains 4 power, takes 4 damage. She gains 1, and she's chilling on the point. This does allow Taskmaster to safely move onto the secure, which he then interacts with to heal 1. I end up scoring 5. He scores 4, so the score ends up being 14-11, rounding out the 3rd round. So the big swing with Miles helps a lot. So let's see what happens in the next one. All right, it is round 4. And as I said, the score is 14 for Web Warriors, 11 for Criminal Syndicate. I do still have priority. And now I'm thinking maybe I don't actually go with Venom. Yes, it would be pretty big to daze Proxima right now and take her cube. But because Miles is holding 2, and he has 2 damage on him now, that it's possible that the good move is to activate Miles. But he decides that this is the Shadow Organization turn. Taskmaster uses it, and so does Kingpin. He ends up deciding not to use it on Green Goblin and figures he wants to save the power. I decide that even though Venom is not going to activate, I am still going to have him use all webbed up on Proxima, figuring I want her to be slowed either way, just in case she moves away or something, she KOs Venom or something now. I figure I'm going to get it done now, and if she shakes the slow to advance away, that still negates one of her actions, so it still feels like a good use of the card. Now I am going to activate Miles. I will interact with the secure to heal 1. I am going to use Web Swing to be at range 2 from Kingpin. And the idea here is that if the kick goes well, I might be able to daze Kingpin, which I feel like may lock in the game for me. He rolled no blocks, but I only rolled 1 damage, and he is going to negate it. So at this point, I think there's no chance that I'm going to daze Kingpin, so I'm just going to advance away. My opponent was thinking that I should have double moved and just like totally booked it away, and that this left Miles a little bit open. But he has stealth, so anyone who goes after him has to kind of get into range of Enchantress. And so even if they go after him and put a bunch of attacks into him and get him dazed and then are able to pick up the cubes, they're in range, like they're too close to Enchantress to avoid that. And so he would have to kind of find a way to like deal with Enchantress and deal with Miles. So that might have seemed a little bit riskier than it actually was. but I thought getting a little bit of distance from the other characters so I'm not too close to anyone, and potentially getting the days on Kingpin was worth it. Plus, Miles versus Kingpin action. How can I resist? I have to go for it. But can't have Miles roll amazing every kick. He's had 2 great kicks so far, so the third one being a little meh was kind of to be expected. So from here, we're contemplating the not Taskmaster, but contemplating having Kingpin move up and seeing about where he would throw Miles to. It will be a little bit rough if the one Kingpin movement gets him within range 2, but I think mathematically it doesn't work because I was at maximum range 2, plus I did a medium movement away. And so I think even with his extended base size, I don't think he can get in range to use a headbutt. And so, but we're going to double check holding the characters as tightly as we can, but he's definitely not going to be within range 2. So here he's going to decide, because his throw is only range 2, even though it throws medium, he would have to double move to get me in the throw. We contemplate whether he should not go for that and go on the point, but he knows he's not really going to be staying on the point, and so the best move is likely to get Kingpin close enough that he can throw Miles towards Taskmaster and Zemo. So, Kingpin moves up. Yes, he does leave her within range 3 of Enchantress, but at this point, Enchantress does not care about Kingpin. It is not critical to the rest of this turn. So now what we're going for is I'm actually grabbing Spider-Man, and what I'm going to do is we're going to try to get the best angle possible, because Miles needs to avoid the barrier, and so we want to move as close as possible to Taskmaster and Zemo while avoiding the wall. So we kind of use another figure to try to kind of map that out as best as possible. All right, so Miles a little bit more exposed. He is still stealthy, so not anything too horrific to deal with there, but there are some potential attacks. Now I'm thinking now I have to go for Proxima. I think I need to go for that. There definitely would be some consideration that maybe he should have saved the Kingpin activation, but there's the potential that Enchantress could have moved him even further away, so then there's no throw on Miles at all. So he kind of had to do Kingpin there. With the 2 dice from All Webbed Up, I end up dealing 2 damage after her invulnerability. She does use martial arts. It drops her down to 1, which now I will use Clintar Rage to chuck her into the building so that I can pick up the cube. And he has another action, so he moves up onto the building to kind of give himself cover and hopefully stay safe from other shenanigans. We decide to just go ahead and get All Webbed Up off the table, because with Proxima dazed, there isn't much else to do in that particular situation. I would have to slow someone else, which I don't even think my team has a way to do. So now the question is, who does what from here? He needs Goblin to stay alive, and so he decides before going after Miles, the best thing to do here is probably to see if he can get the days on Valkyrie, because he does have some power, and if he can get the days on Valkyrie now, that helps secure that point. And it can become too much of an issue that because he's down to 2 stamina, the chance of Valkyrie getting to activate and daze him is pretty likely. And unfortunately, there still is some shenanigans where Gwen could go just about anywhere and get him off the point, but the best thing to do is just try to get Valkyrie out of this situation. There was some contemplation of maybe go with Taskmaster now, and just start, advance up and get some attacks on Miles. But he ends up deciding that the best decision here is to try to get Valkyrie off before she activates. And there is some consideration where he needs something kind of big to happen here. And the problem is, it just seems completely unrealistic to have Goblin not activate and Valkyrie only dealing 1 damage in 2 attacks and potentially throwing something at him. It just seems unlikely that he will have any chance of surviving, and he kind of needs that point, or at least needs to make Goblin harder to deal with. The problem here is I rolled a crit and 3 out of 4 dice as blocks, and then with the reroll, I end up going into 4 blocks and take no damage. And so she doesn't even get incinerated from the Night of the Goblin. So that was just an awful turn of dice for him in a moment where he kind of needed something to go his way. That could have potentially made a pretty big impact, but overall, I end up taking 1 damage from the 2 attacks. So Valkyrie has just been tanking like a boss this game. So at this point, I'm thinking that I still probably do activate Valkyrie now. And I'm thinking I can potentially negate the Taskmaster attack on Miles by throwing him out of position. And so what I do here is she is going to advance once and then just advance again. I'm not charging. I don't want to risk it. And then I just kind of like throw him backwards, thinking that now the odds of him getting in range to strike, he may not even, he may be able to walk and throw 1 shield at Miles, but probably not going to be enough there. So now he still has Taskmaster and he still has Zemo, but I have Enchantress and Gwen, and so I'm getting the last activation this round because of the Proxima days, so it is not looking good for him at this point. So we kind of need something big to happen with Miles. Decide that what he can do here, it's a little risky, but he kind of needs something crazy to happen. So we decide he has the 4 power. He can spend 2 to charge and spend 2 to Blade Rush. He needs to generate power to be able to pick up the cubes, but Blade Rush will allow him to advance and get a second attack on him. So it gets a little weird if Blade Rush actually were to daze Miles and then he has no power, but he could potentially drop the cubes towards Enchantress, and then he Blades Rushes towards the cubes and then makes an attack on Enchantress to try to generate power. Both of those things are possible, but either way, this is not optimal, but kind of needs to go for something, and getting the 2 attacks on Miles seems like it would really help the overall odds of success here. Because 2 attacks, better than 1 attack. So, okay, so he charges Blade Rush. It's going to be 6 dice, and he has 1 reroll. And he rolls 1 success. And so, unfortunately, there's no damage there. We check. I had rerolls, but he had 1 reroll, I had 2 rerolls. Overall, no damage. So he advances towards, but again, still ends up being no damage. So unfortunately, Zemo totally whiffed there. He did leave me bleeding, but that doesn't really matter. I have Gwen and Enchantress, and so we're going to go ahead and activate Gwen. At this point, it is getting a little superfluous, but we decide let's just show off everything that the Web Warriors team can do. There was actually a point where I was kind of like, I'm just gonna activate Gwen and move on. He's like, no, like go all in. Let's see how many points you can get this round. And I'm like, all right, man, all right. So Gwen moves once. I realize, and so I'm concerned that if I try to pull from that spot, that he may end up still being within range 1 of the secure. So I advance a second time. And then I'm able to pull him that direction after the second one. So now I have Venom scoring the top point, Gwen over there on that one, Enchantress is still over there on that side. He has Taskmaster. He's just like, all right, we're just gonna see if we can kill, just kill Valkyrie at this point. I rolled, and then I was like, oh wait a minute, I actually can't re-roll against that. I block 1. And he overall ends up dealing 4 damage, takes her down to 1, so he does not even get the moral victory on Valkyrie. And so we're like, all right, well, let's just resolve this in the most awful way possible. Enchantress is going to walk and double walks. And so I will spend 2 to advance him towards her. And I want to make sure I don't mess this up, so I just advances short, so he's not within 1, but within 1 of her, spends 3, takes the cube. So I end up scoring all 5 cubes and 3 out of 4 of the secures. So I score 8 points, and he ends up getting 0. So 22 to 11. The most ridiculous ending to a match I think I've had so far, but that is what Web Warriors can do. So thank you everyone for watching, and remember, I do have the promo still going, so once I hit 500 subscribers or the end of November, I'm sending someone an Angela and Enchantress box, so go ahead, subscribe to the channel, and I love all of you. Until next one, nerds, peace.